Hello.
Hello. Hey, let me see if I can get this to work. I'm just having some issues. You can hear me?
I can hear you.
Alrighty. So it looks like the camera is not working.
Hi.
There we
Great
go.
to
How's it
see
going?
ya. Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are
Yeah.
the holidays?
Holidays were good. I told everyone, I'm like, I'm so glad that they're over though, because I am someone who just loves routine and just like thrives in my routine. And when that gets
Yeah,
thrown off, it's like my mojo is just all over the place. So I'm
for
happy to be
sure.
like back into the swing of things. How about you?
Yeah, kind of the same. Although no complaints, I got to go to some cool places. My wife and I went to the UK.
Oh, fun.
So
I saw that. I saw that on Instagram.
yeah, it was a blast. So we did England, Scotland, and then finished off in Amsterdam. So it was a good time.
So
It was a
good.
great time.
Are you
Yeah,
feeling good about 2020?
yeah, I am feeling good about 2020. It's so far a different feel for the beginning of this year, just because
Yeah.
last year was insane. I set some cool goals and was striving for them, but I felt like a lot of the year was like running around like a chicken with my head cut off. So this year is a year of like dedicated focus to a couple things and do those things well. So I'm feeling good about it so far. How about you?
Totally good. I had this like interesting realization. I think over the holidays actually, and over the last few weeks, that just entrepreneurship and becoming an entrepreneur and running your own business really is self and personal development at its core. It's
Oh
just
my
like
gosh. Yeah.
you, in order to give the best to your clients or your employees or anyone that you're engaging with on a regular basis, you have to be healthy inside and totally healthy, like physically and mentally and spiritually, before you can really give yourself to others, you know?
Big
So
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge realization for me over the last few weeks. So it feels like I'm kind of like ripping ripping out all of these things and like putting things back together. And I don't know, that's the only way that I can think of to.
That's cool though. Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
no, it's good. So it's so funny. When I asked Terry, I was like, okay, Terry, I have Jake. We're doing this podcast tomorrow. Um, what do you think? I was like, what do I need to know about Jake? And he goes, this is what he says to me. He goes, um, well, his company made Inc.'s 500 fastest growing companies list. He has knocked on about 100,000 doors as a door-to-door salesman. He bikes a lot, and he's a Christian, but he has really cool tattoos.
I guess that sums it up pretty
I was
much.
like, okay, that is the intro.
Yeah, that is awesome.
I thought it was super sweet. So how did you? I was like, that's so good. Uh,
Yeah.
so how did you guys get connected?
We got connected through, well, originally through my business partner, Max.
Mhm.
So, Max is actually the founder of the company that I work at, Basemakers. And he met Terry through, Terry was actually leading like a week long immersive digital marketing course. And Max is kind of a serial entrepreneur. So, he had started a brand and ended up taking that course to Terry. And the two of them chatted about this compete to create course. Are you familiar with that?
Mhm.
Terry posts about it all the time. So I'm sure now that I say it, you'll recognize it in his posts. But it's a mindset course taught by a guy named Michael Gervais. He
Oh,
works with the
yes.
Seattle Seahawks.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I was just getting the call. And Terry's been pretty involved in that. Anyways, Terry and I ended up in the same small group through that 8-week course. So you're paired up with like 3 or 4 other people, and you comment on each other's work, and you encourage each other, and so him and I just kind of got to know each other through that. And then when I saw he was based in New York, I was like, man, I'm there all the time. Let's connect. So
Yeah.
it's been cool. Yeah, he's such a smart guy. I've learned a ton from him.
Me too. I have learned so much from him, and he's actually the reason that we're sitting on this today, right now.
Yeah,
He
which is
connected us.
great. Yeah, he's an awesome guy.
So, okay, I'm like so curious to how you got started with Base Makers and kind of what the company really is all about. And honestly, it just made that list, which is crazy. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about
Yeah,
Basemaker.
really exciting. So Basemakers was born out of a need from Max's first company. So I don't know if you've heard of the brand Just Chill. It's a natural stress relief drink.
Mm-mm.
Um, you just moved to NorCal, right?
Yeah, Oakland. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And where were you at before?
I was not super far, just in Gilroy, which is like an hour and a half south.
Oh, gotcha. All right. So still in the NorCal area. Yeah. So I mean, it was in Whole Foods up there and Molly Stone's and I think a few other stores basically. But they got to the point with that company, with that brand, where the biggest expense on their P&L were the area sales managers, right? So you're just paying for all these salaries in every city around the country. So finally, Max was just looking at this and said, is there any way that we can kind of cut costs? And he started brainstorming with some other team members there at the brand. And they said, well, what if we had an area sales manager that could ideally rep two different brands at once, two non-competing brands.
Mhm.
And so since they were a stress relief drink, they reached out to like another non-competing beverage brand in the beginning, this brand called Minta, and said, hey, do you want to go in on a person with us? We'll share one rep. We'll try it in LA and we'll try it in Denver simultaneously, and we'll see how this works. So that brand said, yeah. And my cousin worked with Max at this first company, Just Chill. So he was like, I know a sales guy in Denver.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I got roped in the beginning, was they just needed a sales guy to come test this new thing out, basically.
Okay.
And so I got onboarded in Denver along with a guy named Mike in Southern California.
Mhm.
And that was 5 years ago. So that was the very beginning of Basemakers. It was just two brands. Can one person go into all these grocery stores and build two brands at one time instead of just one? And we'll split that rep's salary with another brand. So anyways, it unfolded from there. And we ultimately just kind of became this third-party sales service across the entire food and beverage industry. And now we've got, 50 plus different brands that we rep, which is exciting.
Oh my gosh. So, any brands that I would know right off the top of my head?
Yeah, some of the bigger ones would be RX Bar, if you've
Okay.
seen those.
Yeah, totally.
Health Aid Kombucha
I
would
saw
be
that on the
another big
website.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some big ones. We've worked with a couple other brands that are bigger name, like Bulletproof. If you've seen Bulletproof bars,
Yeah.
Bulletproof Diet, yeah. Perfect Bar, if you've seen them too. So yeah, there's some fun ones on there that we work with.
So, up until you joined Basemakers, it says that you have knocked on over or almost about 100,000 doors. So you
Yeah,
hustled a lot. And I think I'm so happy to have you on, because one of the major things that people come to me about, and I think one of the things that my audience in particular is really hungry to learn more about, is not only how to sell their business, but how to sell themselves. And I think it's in everything that we do, whether we're selling an idea or we're selling a product or a service. It's like such a big part of life.
yeah.
So I'm so excited to hear about what your process is kind of like. And honestly, what kind of advice that you would give someone who's nervous about kind of stepping up to the plate, because that's people's biggest fear, is just being rejected. And I'm sure that yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
There
absolutely.
was
I
like
mean,
3 questions wrapped up into one.
no, I love it. I mean, obviously, this is something that I'm passionate about and am working on building up a sales consulting service purely for this. I just love helping people kind
Yeah.
of find what their voice is and walk them through this process, because it is not easy. So where should we start? Which question should I start with?
Well, let's start with your background. So
Okay.
100,000 doors.
Yeah, 100,000 doors. So everything really started when I was 15. When I was 14, I went and got a work permit to work at this new restaurant that opened up in my neighborhood, and I made friends with this guy there, a coworker. And after a couple of years, he left, and I, by chance, ran into him at a Starbucks, and I didn't really know him that well. We didn't go to school together or anything. I just ran into this guy at a Starbucks, and he was like, "Jake, it's been a while. Are you still at that burger place?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, I think you've got the type of personality that might work out at this new place I'm working. I said, oh, what is it? He said, it's door-to-door sales. You should come by and check it out. And I didn't even have a car, didn't even have a license. So he drove me like the next week to this office that was straight out of Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, probably like moral compass probably a little bit higher at this place, but it was still wild. I mean, it was just packed out with high school kids, college kids, and older people that were like just come together, a bunch of delinquents basically, but amazing, amazing people. And I was just exposed to this wild environment at age 15, the world of door-to-door sales. And so
where were you based? Was this in DC?
Yes, I grew up in the DC area.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it.
About 15 minutes from here. And so, yeah, the first couple nights I did it, I was just terrified, shaking, knocking on these random strangers' doors. I couldn't even pronounce the company's name right, but they didn't even care. They're just paying people commission. So it's like little to no training. And oh my gosh, I remember like one of my first days, my interview, the manager was wearing a gold suit, like just ridiculous, a gold suit. And he just came into the room, and he was like, who can guess the number between 1 and 10? Whoever guesses it gets $100 bill. And it was like, that was the type of environment that we had, just this random, like throwing cash around, people smoking cigarettes inside, just like so nuts. But it was a lot of fun.
Imagine, especially as a 15-year-old, like I think about where I was at 15. Yeah. I probably would have gotten eaten alive in an environment like that. But I think that's probably good though, because it makes you like just
oh my
out.
Gosh. Yeah, it really did. It was wild and it was cutthroat. But it was fun. I had nothing to lose. And I think that helped, right? Because I'm in high school, my parents are paying the bills, I've got nothing to worry about. So yeah, spending a couple months at a place where I could have gotten fired or not paid if I didn't sell didn't matter. I think that was like where I was really fortunate, was I got started where I didn't need the money really.
Right.
So, because a lot of people, if you start out in a commission only job right now, I mean, that's a high risk, right? So anyways, I think that helped. And so kind of got started from there, did that for a couple of years, a little over 2 years throughout the rest of high school. And then did it in between my college years when I was home. And then did it for a couple of years when I took off some time from college. And then finally finished it up with a stint selling security systems in Chicago, door to door. So it was a wild time.
When people say door to door, do they legitimately mean door to door?
Yeah. So
we were walking around, going to different houses.
Oh man. Yeah. So we would meet in an office every day.
Yeah.
And we would meet at around 11 a.m. And this was after high school. Before high school, we met at 4 and we went out, we knocked some doors for like 2 hours, and it was a little bit more low key. But when I was doing the actual door-to-door job at like post high school, I started at 11. We met at 11, and then you would get in someone's car with a few other people, and then they would drop you off in a neighborhood, and they wouldn't pick you up until 9 o'clock. So it was 11 till 9. It was a 10-hour shift. And they would say, if you're hungry, knock on a door. You got to use the bathroom, knock on a door. Thirsty, knock on a door.
That is crazy.
It was unbelievable. Yeah.
I just feel like, I don't know. Are there a lot of door-to-door salesmen now?
Yeah, there are thousands. There are thousands. I mean, the last company that I worked for, there were over 5,000. What's that?
I said, even with the internet. It just feels like something kind of antiquated to me a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, certainly, right? It just, I guess, depends on what you're selling and who your target market is. But door-to-door salespeople are still around and still very effective. That's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think you learned during that period, like being a door-to-door salesman, that you can apply to, maybe business online or just into sales in general? Like, what did you learn back then that is now applicable to your life now?
Well, really, so many things. If we were to sit and think about it, I'm sure I could almost bring everything back to some degree to door-to-door sales. But I think the thought that comes to mind right now as you ask me this question is taking ownership for everything that's going on with your business. especially as a solo entrepreneur, or really just a leader in any company, is taking ownership over every aspect. Because that was something I learned early on when you would have certain individuals complain about not selling anything. You put me in a poor neighborhood, or you put me in too rich of a neighborhood, or this neighborhood isn't safe, or whatever the case may be. And someone saying, hey, I want that guy's territory or that girl's territory. She's selling like crazy. I'm stuck with this. And it was just always finding a way to put the blame on somebody else for your circumstances. And the best salespeople, the top salespeople at any of those door-to-door jobs, or I also sold cars for a while too. Like this, the same thing applied. The best people never complained. They just took ownership of whatever their territory was, or their customer base, or whatever they were given, and they made it work.
Yeah.
And I think I still use that today in the everyday, whether it's Base Makers or Grow Savagely.
Totally. Do you think I've heard this before, like there are no objections or something. There are just, objections aren't valid. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that I don't know. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think so. It really comes down to prospecting. And first off, prospecting is such a freaking old term that you'd find on like an 80s sales book, basically. But really, it does come down to identifying who your target market is.
Yeah.
There are some people outside of that where your product or service is not going to be a good fit for them.
Yeah.
And maybe it really is too expensive.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah. So there are some objections that are valid in that sense. But if we're talking within our target market, you've got those people figured out, you know exactly who they are, and your product or service is a good fit for them, but you're still getting objections. This is where, as a salesperson at my core, I believe there is a way through every single one of those. And if you've got the right product for the right target market, it's your fault if they don't buy it, and nobody else's.
Okay. So I've had people ask me this, and I've even come across this in my own business, where maybe that this is the right product. This is my person. And I know I'm supposed to work with this person. There are a couple objections. They raise those objections up, and it's really hard to actually like tackle those, because it kind of feels a little bit emotional at some point. Or like, maybe you're the person sitting in front of you is like, well, I have to talk to my husband and wife. We had a really tough year in terms of financials, or maybe, a different objection. How do you get past, I guess it's just taking emotion out of it. You know what I mean? Like, how do I really dig in and work with the person in front of me without getting the result that we need to get to without.
Yeah, absolutely. There are objections, and then there are smokescreen objections. So I think the first step is just understanding what's behind that objection, right? So if somebody tells me I really need to talk to my spouse about this first, they haven't said they're not interested or that they can't afford it. And if we've had a long enough conversation beforehand, maybe everything leading up to that point tells me that they are truly interested and that this could solve a problem in their life. So I know we're almost there, right? Yeah. But if the objection is they need to talk to their spouse or their business partner, what they're really telling me or almost asking me is, how do I pitch this to my spouse?
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really good. It's like reading in between the lines.
Yeah, exactly. You've got the explicit problems and you've got the implied problems. And so much of sales is just shutting up and listening to not only what they're saying, but everything that they're not saying, and just identifying really what the key needs are.
Right. What do you think? Many of the people who are listening are solo entrepreneurs. So people who are really pitching themselves. And what would you say is the best thing to keep in mind for somebody who is pitching themselves as a service?
Pitching themselves as a service. Truly, this is something that I'm still working on myself as well, because in the beginning of 2019, I launched Grow Savagely, which is, I'm not even fully opening the doors yet because I'm still with base makers.
Yeah.
But the plan is to operate as a sales consultant and provide like corporate sales trainings for large companies. And so I've had the last 12 months kind of as this trial period for me to kind of figure out what that looks like, selling myself as a service, because I haven't had to worry about that in the past. I've always sold something else.
Totally.
It's totally different. It's totally different. So, honestly, I'm not sure if I am the best person to ask in terms of selling yourself as a service. One thing I've learned from Terry is identifying, or he says, exploiting your key differentiator, exploiting your key differentiator. And so, it just takes time to understand what that is. For me, I thought it was the fact that I was the president of an Inc. 500 service, but he was like, nobody cares about that because you did that with a team. Your differentiator is you knocked on 100,000 doors, and that's why people will listen to you, right?
My gosh, totally.
But that didn't click with me. It took somebody else revealing that to me. So I don't know. I mean, if you're looking to identify what your key differentiator is, you should talk to your friends and family and peers and ask them for feedback. What makes me different? And try to hone in on that. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I teach in my program and curriculum is, getting really, really clear on what your personal brand is. Those 5 pillars of your personal brand, principles and passions and purpose, and making sure that all of those are aligned with your work. And I think once you get really, really clear on that, it gets so much easier to sell yourself because you know yourself. It's like you have to know thyself in order, in order to sell it. So tell me a little bit about what Grow Savagely looks like for you in the future. Are you going to do any one-on-one sales coaching, or is it primarily for private clients?
I would like to offer one-on-one sales coaching, and that is available currently. Somebody can go onto my website and book a one-on-one session. So that's definitely available, and would love to help people out. But yeah, ideally, I would like to go in with a company to a company for like a 1 day or a half day or a 2-day training session, and just provide some different perspectives. There are a lot of sales teams out there that are a little bit stagnant. They've been doing the same thing. And a lot of them are looking at it like a numbers game. When I talk to people at larger companies now about their sales teams and asking them, what are they doing to sharpen themselves and learn and practice? They look at me like I'm crazy. Like, what do you mean? I just use Salesforce. I'm like, yeah, but how is that like helping you become a better salesperson? Yeah. They're like, well, I just categorize the leads and put them in the funnel, and then I work them through the funnel. I'm like, you're an order taker, not a salesperson. Like I need to come in there and work with. I just had a guy yesterday actually who's high up at an investment bank comment on one of my videos, and he was like, these are making me realize how few actual salespeople are out there these days. So I that's the plan. Come in, bring fresh perspectives, get everybody excited, help them to learn how to really identify what a customer's needs are. And then frame what they're selling in a way that meets those needs.
I've had a question come up from people who have asked, should I put my my pricing on my website? Should I pitch my pricing over the phone? Should I do a Zoom call? Should I try to sell through email? What do you think is the best route to go? And I think maybe it's personal preference. I don't know. In your experience, what do you think works best?
Yeah, I have a preference.
Okay.
I'm very passionate about this.
Let's hear it.
There are other salespeople that won't agree, and I think some marketers won't either. But sales is part of sales is an exchange of value. You're exchanging this stack of dollars in return for this value. Now, when you put your pricing on a website, you are leaving the entirety of you, your service, and your value up to the perception of the customer, right? So they're going to perceive the information a certain way.
Right.
And the beauty of sales with human beings, something that I don't think will ever be replaced, is you can just read my pamphlet and it will tell you some information. But if I can chat with you over the course of 20, 30, 60 minutes, I can really get to know the specifics, some of those implied problems that we talked about earlier. And I could tweak my message. I could tweak it to fit your needs.
Yes.
So no, I don't put pricing up because I don't know if they'll perceive the proper value right off their bat, and I'd rather just have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do the song and dance like, oh, let's just hold on there on the pricing and we'll wait till we get there. Like that stuff drives me nuts when other companies do it to me. Like I'll give them a ballpark right off the bat, but yeah, I want to chat with them.
Yeah, I feel the same way. When I first started my business, I was really unsure. I mean, of course, I'm just like figuring everything out as I go. I'm just Googling literally everything. For a while, I had price on my website. And I think really it was so that I felt like I had clarity and like I felt confident in like actually having something that was set in stone and structured. And then I realized exactly what you just said, that it didn't always fit. And I didn't want people, exactly. It's all about what people perceive the price to be. And so I ended up taking it off. I had set packages and pricing that was on the back end that I just knew. And I started making sure that every person that I was selling to was through a Zoom call, not through a phone call, not through an email or anything, but through a Zoom call, because I felt like that's when I could really connect with people and they could see my face. They could see my facial expressions, you know, how I was like reacting to what they were telling me. And I just like, it skyrocketed. And that's how I like really grew my business. And I really believe that was just through Zoom.
Right.
And I think too, it's like, I guess know yourself and know your strengths and weaknesses. Some people have a hard time with video conferences, so maybe they are better off on a phone call. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe so. I think, well, I think a lot of people just don't know how much influence they can have over a potential customer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that they know. And what a lot of them are doing are leaving it up to a numbers game. I mean, it is a numbers game in a sense where you're going to have X number of leads that come through or traffic to your website and the conversion rate and whatever, all that stuff.
Right.
But I've just been a part of too many experiences in my life where somebody told me no to my face and then 30 minutes later said yes. So I'm not going to leave that up to my website to do what I know it can't do, you know? I want to be I want to get in front of those people because I've seen it happen. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, love that. Okay. I have all these questions now.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question that comes up often when I'm talking with other entrepreneurs is the whole idea of like, oh, I feel like slimy when I'm selling. Like I'm scared to sell because I feel like I'm just like pushing myself and my services on someone. What would you say to someone who's battling fears like that?
I think in line with what we previously said about the objections, if it's not for that person, yeah, it's slimy. Like if it's not solving a problem in their life or making their lives better somehow, you have no business selling them the good or the service, right? But if you know that it's going to help them, and they've also told you with their answers to your questions, they've let you know that this is going to be helpful for their lives, you should see it as your responsibility to keep going. It's not being pushy. It's your responsibility. Here, just quick, simple example that this is something that I have never forgotten. And it is just so small, but it's like a sales principle that I follow and now teach on. But I think this was 9 years ago. And I walked into a shoe store to grab some walking shoes because I was actually doing door-to-door sales and I needed a new pair of shoes walking all over the place. I go in, the guy asks me what I need. I tell him, he takes me to the giant wall of shoes in the back. And he right off the bat points to a pair that's $200. And I said, absolutely no way. I'm not spending $200 today. I'm thinking $100 or less, just something basic to get me through. And he said, all right, no problem. No problem. He didn't push back, wasn't being pushy. He just said, yeah, I got you. What do you need the shoes for? started asking me questions about my job, started asking me questions about my life. What are my hobbies? What am I into? I told him I run a lot. I also skateboard. I still hit the skate park. I'm one of the only older guys there these days. And then he takes me over to the pressure pad to look at my arches, and then has me walk on the treadmill. And then he goes, I have the perfect pair of shoes for you. And I was like, all right, sweet. And he walks me back over to the wall and takes me back over to the same $200 pair of shoes. He said, I know you said these were too expensive, but just give me a second. You mentioned you're walking around all day. You mentioned A, you mentioned B, you mentioned C. You have no arch in your right foot. Is that the foot that you push with when you skateboard? I said, yeah, it is. He said, well, that's why. And he starts explaining to me how, and then he started asking me about my rest habits. He starts telling me, you know, your back is hurting because your hips are hurting. Your hips hurt because your knees hurt. Your knees hurt because your ankles hurt. And at the base of all these joints are your feet. So all that pain that you said you feel and why you can't sleep at night, it all starts with your feet. And these shoes will solve that problem, and you'll be able to rest better ultimately. So I bought the shoes and $50 pair of insoles, spent more than double. And now I still to this day repurchase those insoles every time they wear out, the same insoles.
That is
and it's
amazing.
Like, yeah, this guy, like my life was totally improved, but I wasn't about to spend a dime over $100 when I walked in, and I walked out spending $250.
Because he really took the time to listen to what was going on in your life. And then also kind of push that back onto you at the end. So like you said, A, B, C, and D, and this is how we're going to solve A, B, C, and D.
Yeah. If he was a crappy salesperson, he would have said, all right, let's go find a cheaper pair of shoes, and then a cheaper, and then a cheaper, and then a cheaper, until I finally said one, right? That's what so many of us do. Oh, okay. Well, maybe we can talk about a discount, you know, and then you just keep discounting all your services, and then your margins are being crushed. And then you're wondering why you're working so hard for barely any money, especially as a solo entrepreneur. You can sell without giving a discount if you just listen to what the true problems are. And that's what this guy did, you know?
Oh, that's really
so it's your responsibility as a salesperson to keep going.
Okay. I love it. I love it. Keep going. What do you think about discounting services? So I had someone tell me once upon a time that one of the good ways to close a deal is incentivized pricing. So if I'm on the phone call with someone and I'm like, hey, this package is $3,000. If you book today, sign today, it's $2,000. What do you think?
I mean, I know that's hypothetical, but even if you're willing to just chop off $1,000, if I sign, you know, that's sending a message to me that maybe the package really doesn't contain that much value and you were inflating it in the first place.
Yep.
But again, I know it's just a hypothetical example, but really, I think you're sending a message every time you provide a discount, right? Mm-hmm. That your product or service is not
actually worth it is
valuable. Yeah, it's not actually worth that amount. So ultimately, I don't believe in offering discounts. And I also, I mean, you know, maybe I'd hook up a friend or family member or something like that.
Sure.
Maybe, but really, you are sending a message that it's not as valuable. And also, I think what you're doing is you're leaving the sales conversation on unstable ground, right? Because then sure, you made a transaction and they gave you money, but then they're even walking away with your product or service under this understanding, or with this understanding that it could be cheap. It's not as valuable. And then will the referrals be as strong later? Will the testimonials be as strong later? Like, they need to be fully bought in to your product or service just as much as you are.
Wow.
And yeah, I think you're sending a bad message when you offer the discount.
Great answer. Great answer. That has come up a lot, actually, with people that I've just been talking with. In terms of, okay, now we're in the context of personal branding, right? So a lot of people who are listening are building their personal brand and the process of it. How would you say is the best way to sell yourself on social media when you're not really necessarily selling to one person? You're selling to the internet without, you know what I mean? So
right.
it's a little more nuanced, perhaps.
It is. Yeah, that
And
one's tough too.
I think you do an excellent job at selling yourself, and you push out content. I see your videos and your photos, and you're super active. So what are some things that have helped you, or some tips that you use to sell yourself well across social media?
Yeah, I mean, I've picked up a handful of things along the way, and I'm really only a year into social media. Didn't have an Instagram before last year, so just starting to piece some of this stuff together. But when I started, I can tell you a mistake was I came across as very polished, probably overly so, because my intent was to make this a business Instagram and on LinkedIn and Facebook and everywhere else, and let people know that this was a professional business, these consulting services that I was going to offer. But that doesn't make you unique, right? There are so many people out there offering sales consulting or personal branding or leadership or whatever the case may be, marketing. Right? Everyone's doing that these days. And I think what makes us unique are, well, for one, it's probably going to be one or two of those key differentiators that we spoke about earlier. Maybe it's knocking on 100,000 doors. But as a baseline, we're all just unique individuals anyways. And that's what other people are drawn to, is like who we are as an individual. And so I found this out, one, through reading books and chatting with different people, but also through my Instagram insights. I just looked straight at the data, right? And so all of my posts that were more personal or featured a picture of me and my wife together, or me on a bike versus just like me, speaking at an engagement or something like that. Those were all the ones that they still do the best. They outperform like anything I put on there that has to do with business. Like people just love learning about, you and who we are. Yeah.
I know it is wild to me. And it makes my heart so happy, because obviously that's my job, right? Is helping people be unique online and feel comfortable enough in themselves to put that message online. And to your point, same thing. I remember I send out a weekly newsletter. I'm going to track which blog posts have the best click rates and open rates and stuff. And the best blog post of 2019 I pushed out was the one about me moving to Oakland and looking back at the last 4 years.
Yeah.
I've done so many like blog posts that I've like totally
You pour your heart and soul
there you
into.
go, pour my heart and soul into, like these long posts that are like really informative, that teach you all of these things. And like the one that does best is like just the heartfelt, like I'm moving, my life's moving, all the things. So,
yeah.
It's crazy. And so I love this idea of turning like industry experts into industry influencers. And making the entrepreneur into someone who feels comfortable enough putting their personal story out for the world to hear and see, because I think it really does provide context around why we do what we do, and why, what products and services that we are selling.
Yeah. I think especially because there are more and more people doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas, we look at it more of a traditional business model. If we're going to talk about fast food places, a handful will just come to mind, right? McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, or whatever. And then if we were to think about car companies, Honda, Nissan, Toyota, like a few of these come to mind. But when it comes to building your personal brand, there are almost 8 billion people on this planet. We've got so many people participating. And if I say I've got an Inc. 500 business, and you say you've got an Inc. 500 business, and Terry says he has, like, what separates us?
Yeah.
Other than just our unique personalities. And I think like this is the time where people will probably want to work with you because they just connect with you. They just relate with you.
I had someone the other day schedule a call with me because she was like, I loved your fake British accent that you were doing.
Really?
Because I just started really showing up as myself. Like for a long time, I made the same mistake as you. I was really trying to be professional, because I really, there is that part in me that I want to be at that level. Of course I take pride in my work, but I wasn't totally being authentic and goofy like my normal self. And I made a decision about halfway through the year that I said, no more of that. I want it to feel really authentic. And it has like given me the best results. And it has made, I think when you do that, I think two things happen. I think you hyper attract the people that you really want to work with. And you also hyper repel the people who are probably not going to be a good fit. And I think the value of putting yourself out there totally, wholly, and uniquely and authentically is that you've already kind of qualified the people who are wanting to schedule discovery calls or clarity calls with you, because they already kind of know you.
Right.
On social media. Yeah.
Huh. I hadn't thought about it in terms of them already knowing you, but that is exactly what it is. There's a comfortability there with it.
And it's interesting. The last few clients that I just brought on, they're going through my program, the Personal Brand Accelerator, which is a 3-month one-on-one coaching program. And all 3 of these women started last week, and they've all been connected with me on social media for at least 2 months, I think, before we even started working together. And it was like becoming like instant connection, really good friends right off the bat, just people that I would be friends with. It was just really interesting. And so I think our business relationships have the potential to be much healthier and more enjoyable when we're actually putting our real selves out on social media. So
yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I believe that.
So, okay. I always, at the end of these things, I always want to ask, my one question is, what do you think having a personal brand means to you?
That's a good question. I think I've got a few words floating around in my head, but they all kind of probably stem from the same root, which would be, man, I've never been asked this, so there's a chance I could change my answer later after thinking about it some more. But
I'll put it in show notes.
Okay, at least as of right now, having a personal brand, to me, I think freedom comes to mind.
Yeah, totally.
A sense of freedom. Like there are other words floating around too, like leverage or an advantage. But ultimately, what are those for? It's for freedom, right? So we can have more control over our time, our income, be able to put our time and energy to the places that we want, things that get us excited, the people around us that we enjoy spending time with. So, and I mean, for me, that's the sole goal, right? Is freedom.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of us, especially who are entrepreneurs, are after, having that freedom.
Yeah. I think that's a huge part of it, is you just, I don't know. I mean, if someone tells me to be at work by 8 and forces me, like, that's like, I'll just feel confined. I'll hate it. I'm going to feel like, I don't know, just like restless. But if nobody tells me to be at work by any time, I'll be here at 6, no problem. So it's like,
same way. Yes.
Yeah. It's just the freedom.
It's the freedom.
So,
I don't want someone telling me what to do. I'll do it. If it's from my own will, I will do it better than anyone could have ever asked for,
100%. Yeah, 100%. So, yeah. Freedom for now is my answer. I'll keep thinking about it, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to bring this up in the beginning, but I forgot. So I hear you are the new co-founder or founder of Amwork. Is that right?
Amwork. Yeah, that's right. That's a dream that I hope to realize one day. I am unexplainably passionate about the Amtrak and all things trains. So yeah, Amwork will be a thing one day.
All right, everyone stay tuned for Amwork here.
It's Amtrak plus co-working for anyone listening that's not quite sure. Co-working spaces on Amtrak. It'll happen.
It will happen. I know for sure. Okay. Well, thank you, Jake, so much for doing this with me. Loved picking your brain. All the things.
Yeah, I hope it was helpful.
Oh my gosh, so helpful. So helpful. So
awesome. Well, super grateful to be a part of it. Thanks for asking me. It was a ton of fun. Yeah.
Really. Okay. And then I will see you next week, right? Or in the next couple of weeks?
Yes. So next
Okay.
next Wednesday, I think we said. Pretty
Yeah,
sure.
I think so.
Um, okay, cool. And just quick recap while I've got you here.